There are wolves out here, and worse, much worse.
Spinning straw in the cold. It's remarkable, but it's true. That's this girl a spinning wheel.
God, there's something in here with me, God!
Hi, I'm Sophia Jessica, and this is Angel, and welcome to the fan carpet.
Hello, Andy. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. So it's always a pleasure to speak to you. If we go back to the beginning, was there a defining moment for you to get into the industry?
I don't think there was a defining moment. A series of things which caught my attention and drew me to wanting to make films. From seeing Star Wars as a very young kid, through to watching Evil Dead as a teenager. Those kind of things drew me to knowing I wanted to be involved in films. But there's a big difference between being a kid in Birmingham going, I want to make films, and then figuring out how on earth to do it. So no defining moment, but just a sort of a continued love, I guess, of film, which became a love of horror film. And so yeah, to be here now making horror films is pretty much the dream come true.
Awesome. So what was it about Rumpelstiltskin that made you want to tell this story?
Well, I was looking, through all the fairy tale stuff because, fairy tale horrors are quite big right now and it's what's selling. So we'd kind of my producer hat on. I was like, what's big in the market right now. But I've got a young son, and so a couple of years ago he was of that age where you'd read the fairy tale stories to. And yeah, that was one that's always stuck in my mind because it's a horror story, really. It is a creepy folk horror story. There is a happy ending in sorts that she gets her baby back, but like there's various versions of this tale, but he basically kills himself in a horrible way, Rumpelstiltskin, at the end. It's a nasty little story. And so I thought, well, this is something that is kind of horror and folk horror already. It hasn't been done for a long time. Even in the 90s, which was the last film adaptation, he goes to modern day LA and he drives a motorbike and it's completely different. So I was like, let's tell, a version of the original story, and keep it fairly, close to the Brothers Grimm, what they had in mind when they wrote it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the fairy tales do have like a grim edge to them. They're not like the Disney versions that we know and love. So
yeah, I feel that this kind of turning them into horror films is reclaiming them in a way back from Disney. They've sanitized them, and now we're taking them back to what they were, which was campfire folk horror tales to scare kids with.
yeah, absolutely. What does it mean for you to be a storyteller and tell stories in this way?
I mean, this was different because it was a story. We were adapting a story that existed, so this wasn't something completely new. So you kind of already know that the story is robust enough to survive centuries of retelling. So the underlying structure is there. But the actual Brothers Grimm story, it's only like a page or so. So the challenge for this was trying to trying to flesh it out and to make all the actions seem logical and reasonable and make all the character motivations make sense. Because in the story, it's very much so and so does this, then so and so does this, without really kind of explaining why or how the characters are even feeling. So that was the kind of thing, is how to humanize all of the characters, including Rumpelstiltskin. Who is he? What does he want? Where does he come from? Why does he want this child? And trying to make it relevant and to audiences today.
Absolutely. So can you talk about the casting process and what was it that made Hannah stand out to you to essentially lead the film?
Well, the sort of the two leads for the film are obviously Rumpelstiltskin and then the character we called Evaline. She's just called the miller's daughter in the story. And so Rumpelstiltskin we cast first. He was a recommendation from a special effects artist who I know, a guy called Dan Martin, and he does the special effects for Brandon Cronenberg, for Ben Wheatley, some big stuff. And so I spoke to him originally about doing the Rumpelstiltskin's prosthetics, which you can see here. And he started the process off, and he recommended he recommended Joss Carter, who plays Rumpelstiltskin, and he'd worked with him on a film called Tarot, which came out last year. And Joss plays the devil in that. I don't know if you've seen that film. And he's a creature performer. So Dan was like, if you want a weird goblin guy, this is your man. So we got Joss on. Dan had to then go on to other jobs, but he recommended a guy called Will Harvey to finish off the prosthetics and designing them, and then Will was on set every day to apply them. So we had our Joss, and then Hannah came just through the audition process. I'd met her briefly at a screening of another film she was in, and she did the smart thing. She got my email, and then she saw the casting, and then she emailed me directly and said, I really want to send you a self-tape. She sent the tape, and it was great. So we brought her in for auditions, and we had various actors read with Joss, doing his Rumpelstiltskin thing. And so it was just trying to find the chemistry really between those two characters, because a lot of the film, especially the early part of the film, is them two trapped in a dungeon. So you have to kind of have this real back and forth little chemistry between them. And Hannah was great, and it's quite a tough role. She's got quite a lot to do in this film. She moves from, without any spoilers, being this miller's daughter through up to being the queen, having to deal with Rumpelstiltskin and all of the other characters in the film.
Absolutely. Now Rumpelstiltskin isn't often told on screen. I think the last version I saw was Once Upon a Time with the incredible Robert Carlyle. Yeah, Robert Carlyle. So is that something that enticed you to bring it to life again? Since it's not a story that's told that often.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at to see if it had been done recently, and he's a character in Once Upon a Time and a character in Shrek, but he hadn't had his own film adaptation since the '90s one. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's by the guys who did the Leprechaun movies.
Oh yeah,
so he's just basically another leprechaun. But he goes to modern day LA and tries to get this child there. So the sort of traditional version of the story hadn't been told in a long time. So I thought, okay, this is ripe for retelling. And I think most people kind of have it in their head, but maybe don't remember it that well. They remember maybe the straw and the gold, and so a little bit. So it's something that's familiar, but I think not too familiar and being oversaturated.
Absolutely. I think the fact that it's all practical effects and prosthetics is important to cinema. Is that something that's important to you as a filmmaker?
100%. I mean, I'm a horror fan who kind of grew up with the '80s horrors. All practical effects back then, because we didn't have any CG. So that's important to me, to use as much practical as we can. Obviously, we have to use digital quite often for cost reasons on low budget stuff. But for Rumpelstiltskin himself, I knew he had to be prosthetics. That was like the non-negotiable thing from the very start of this, because if you're doing a low budget indie monster movie, often you can hide the monster and don't reveal him to the third act, and maybe you can get away with it. It's a guy in a mask or something, or a CG character. But Rumpelstiltskin in this, he has loads of dialogue. He's a lead character. It had to be something believable, and it had to be something that would survive close-up shots. So it had to look real. So it had to be prosthetics. That was just to do his face. That was a 3-hour job each day.
Wow. Okay.
So before it's the time Joss got on set, that was 3 hours. It's tough. It's tough when you're scheduling an indie film and suddenly you've got 3 hours without your lead character. But we kind of worked around his availability, shot scenes with the other characters in the mornings, then in the afternoon he'd come on and do his bit. And yeah, I think hopefully it's worth it because yeah, the first time you see Rumpelstiltskin's face in the film, I think that you'll either lose the audience and you'll get them. But if he looks real, like a real character, like a real monster, then I think that's a big part of what makes this film.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you have any memories from filming that you'll remember for the rest of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine so. It was a hard shoot, I'm not gonna lie. Doing a period film on a very low indie British budget is not easy, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you're a bit mad. Um, because you can't just go to Primark to buy a costume, you can't just go to Tesco's to buy some props, you can't just film in the streets. You have to plan everything, and everything obviously has to be period. Um, but the flip side of that is when you're on set and you know, you watch horses go by and everyone's in armor. Suddenly you feel like you're making a real film here. You're making movie magic here. You're making stuff that doesn't exist and you're conjuring it up. And I think that is the magic of it that you don't necessarily get if you're filming something contemporary in a coffee shop somewhere. It's still a fun shoot, but you don't get that same thrill of we did for example, there's like a big dinner scene with like 20 odd extras all eating in this. We've got a little medieval village where we had loads of people dressed up as villagers and the horses going past, and yeah, you're like, yeah, we're making a real movie here. So that's probably the things that I'll remember most, really. It's just conjuring up those things that don't exist in this time, and suddenly you're going back in time, well, to a fantasy world. So those were the best bits of it.
Absolutely. Awesome. So what are you hoping audience will take away from Rumpelstiltskin when they see it?
Well, I'm hoping it kind of reminds them of when they were a child and they heard the story and they were like, that's a bit creepy. Tell me a nicer one, mummy or daddy. Tell me a story that, everybody lives happily ever after. Not one about baby abduction and a suicidal goblin. So you hope it kind of evokes those kind of memories that are, those folk horror memories that are long in the brain. And secondly, I just hope it, it transports people for an hour and a half into, for a bit of escapism, really, into another world. It's not set in a particular time or place. It's just a sort of magical fairy tale, medieval grim world. And some people can go there and hope they enjoy their time, really. And thirdly, I'd hope that they're like, we like that Rumpelstiltskin guy. We want to see more of him because we are looking at potentially doing Rumpelstiltskin 2, depending on how well this goes down. But it's something that we're looking at, and then we would be completely off book. The Brothers Grimm never wrote a Rumpelstiltskin 2, so we would be completely going into new directions and having to kind of come up with something completely original.
Yeah.
Hopefully they like the character and want to see more of him.
Awesome. Would that stay in the same period?
I think so. Yeah, I'm working on ideas at the moment. We probably would stay in the same period. I mean, if it ever gets to the stage when we're doing Rumpelstiltskin 4, 5, 6, then I think the temptation would definitely be like, oh, he goes through a time portal and ends up in present day London, which would be fun. But I think, despite its hardships, making period stuff is a lot of fun. It's playing dress up, really. And
Awesome.
so yeah, I would want to keep it keep it fantasy, keep it period. And it does give it a little point of difference, because obviously there are a lot of horror movies out there at the moment featuring either Disney characters or fairy tale characters, and a lot of them are their contemporary slasher movies.
Yeah, because a load of them are coming back into the public domain, which is
so for now I'd like to keep that point of difference and keep it medieval.
Good idea. That's a good idea, and I'll look forward to seeing that. So just finally, where can we find you online to keep up with everything you're doing?
So I'm on most sites. You can find me under Paranoid Android Films. That's the name of my production company, and that's the company that we produce Rumpelstiltskin through. Paranoid Android Films are on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, or X as it now is. And recently I started putting stuff on TikTok, but I need to find someone younger to help me with TikTok.
Right, yeah.
So I'm like, I think I have to admit my age comes through on TikTok. I don't
mine too.
Really get it. We are on there, and we're posting clips from there, and I want to kind of use it more and more because I think it is important. It's small indie films. We don't get a huge marketing budget for them, so obviously any kind of marketing we can do ourselves through social media is super useful. And we've got a whole bunch of other films in the pipeline at the moment that we're just trying to finish scripts for, find budget for, find talent for. So hopefully we've got a whole bunch of new stuff coming up. So give us a follow, Paranoid Android Films.
Awesome. Well, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Andy. Take care.
No, thank you very much for your support on this film and other films. It's
very welcome.
Very much appreciated.
Always. Yeah, take care.
Thank you for watching The Fan Carpet. Please follow us on Facebook, X and Instagram for more content. Bye for now.
And so be it. Rumpelstiltskin.
You show what you can do. I hear a siren. Maybe you were wrong about me. I'm dangerous and still. Why don't you give me a sign like the sea? Everybody thinks that I'm okay. Sometimes I think I am too. I'm on the outside looking in. I'm waiting for the shockwaves to begin. Oh, won't you let me hold you for one time? Just a rainy day in a London cafe. A London cafe. So give me one last serenade. Say to me, or swear at me till the night turns into day. And it was a shame when daylight faded, because we didn't notice at all.
Thank you for watching The Fan Carpet. If you like this video, be sure to click that thumbs up button at the bottom of your screen. And also be sure to subscribe to the Fan Carpet YouTube channels. They're absolutely free and so much fun too. Be sure to check out the official website, thefancarpet.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date with reviews, competitions, the latest news, and so much more.